tell, then you see the road. I'm to my soul into the sides whenever the smoke clear out of my face and my picture perfect.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the second part of, What If Harry Potter Meets Familiar of Zero? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Hector Flores on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. I can't believe that I have to buy the books of that fraud. I mean it, I know for a fact that Gilderoy Lockhart was the single worst wizard that ever lived. The man was a class clown through his 7 years at Hogwarts. I have argued bitterly with my friend the Hat that he should have stuck him in Hufflepuff, at least there maybe something could be done about the man's ego. A little lesson in humility would have prevented this. No, he placed him in Gryffindor of all places, a place for the brave and loyal. As I walked toward the last place I wanted to see, normally I love that shop, their selection of books was wonderful, but today that clown was having a publicity event, a public appearance and book signing event. I can't believe we have to be forced to buy the books of that idiot. I can cast fire spells, I don't need that garbage to kindle my fireplace. That is when I saw Draco and his father. He was looking at Lockhart the same way I was. Well, that is surprising. You are quite right, Lord Potter, I find buying those books a waste of my money. While we may not be blinded by that person's gilded presence, not everyone shares our opinion. I can feel the glares of every woman who hurt us, don't you? I looked at him and nodded my head. Well, Lord Malfoy, I find it that the truth is preferable. At least they know my true opinion on the man's books. I swear that if that idiot even thinks about using me as a way to get to the first page of the Prophet, I will have a stern talk with the idiot that prints that. He for one looked at me with a rather amused look on his face. I would expect no less. Have you seen the poor family over there? I think the Weasleys are having a hard time buying the books of the very clown we've been talking about. I don't need the books of this idiot, but my friend Ron clearly did. I walked over to the counter and paid for a complete set of school books. The man who owns the bookstore was always nice to me, but thanks to my comment I guess he didn't like the way I talked about Lockhart. I placed my entire purchase in the hands of Ron, and wouldn't you know it, Lucius actually gave the youngest of the Weasley, I think her name was Ginny, a book of his own. I like to do something nice for the least fortunate. Somehow Lucius knew what I was going to say, or maybe it was just a lucky guess. Gilderoy saw me and decided to grab my arm. Harry Potter here to buy your school books, how admirable. You, of course, will get 2 delightful presents from yours truly, a complete signed set of books, and you will get the pleasure of learning from the author. That is true, you heard right, my dearly beloved patrons. I will take the post of Professor of the Defense Against the Dark Arts this year at Hogwarts. I looked at him and whispered something, either let me go, or get used to doing everything with your left arm, 'cause you are liable to lose that arm. He asked me what would be the harm in a little publicity, then I told him that if that was the case, I could tell the crowd about his use of polyjuice during his 5th year to sleep with the head boy at the time. That got him to release my arm faster than if I had cut it off. Since I was free to go home, I decided to drop by the nearest pet shop and buy Morgana a little gift. A stone that had been made to help Bird take care of their feet. My investments were doing great, and my shares in the Prophet had grown quite a bit. I specifically told the bank manager that I wanted all dividends from that stock to be used specifically to buy more shares of the newspaper. He actually agreed with me. 2nd year, and once again to keep appearances I had to use the fireplace near the station again. As I walked towards the barrier I slammed against the barrier and did not open. If you don't open this immediately I will say to hell with it, and I will use floor power to get there. The only difference is that I will find the family that put you up to this, and I will slaughter them. That is when a house elf dressed in ragged came out of hiding. Dobby is sorry that he blocked the path to the train, but the great and powerful Harry Potter must not attend Hogwarts this year. There is a danger that I cannot speak of. To lose the great and mighty Harry Potter would be a tragedy beyond words. I began to shake my head. Dobby, while I appreciate you caring about my safety, I assure you, there is no danger in that castle. I already met and established contact with the serpent in the chamber. She is actually a good friend of mine. So you see, Dobby, I am not in any danger, but my friends are. He began to cry and try to dry his tears on his dirty pillowcase that he used as his clothes. I simply could not stand him doing that. I took out my handkerchief and offered it to him. Big mistake on my part, it seems. I knew of his power and might, but to think he had such a compassionate and kind heart that he would even offer his own handkerchief to a lowly wretch like Dobby, oh, I simply never expected this. He began to cry even more and louder. DMN it, he was making me feel even more guilty. If you understand, Dobby opened the way. I must keep my friends safe. He clicked his long and bruised fingers and the doorway opened. I stepped in and asked him to please take care of himself. I walked away with my few things I was carrying as fast as possible. I got on the train and found a nice compartment to sit in, and without any more interruptions or problems began reading my new book. 1,000 Ways to Hex, Curse, and Charm People, a guide to impress friends and deal with enemies. If anything, the way this book was written made me laugh more than anything. Hermione and Neville finally came into the compartment. Neville probably thinks I would not let others bully him. He would be correct in that regard. The only problem was that Hermione was looking at the cover of the book I was reading. Do you have a problem with my reading material, Hermione? Guess you don't like comedy then. She sat in the seat in front of me and asked me how in the world would a book that talked about killing people be considered comedy. I told her that it was simple. The ways that this book was written was ridiculous. There was no way any killer would actually do the things the way the book was written. As the train began to move, I read a few of the things on it. By the end of the trip, she and Neville were both laughing their heads off. See, I told you, it was a comedy book. Come on, we have to go and ride a carriage. Only first years ride the boats. Neville was disappointed. He said that the boat ride was probably better than the carriage being pulled by those scary winged zombies like horses. I could not understand why am I the only one that appreciates the beauty of the thestrals. I asked the lunch lady for an apple before I got off the train. As we walked, Neville looked at the thestral that would be pulling our carriage. I went over to her and began to pat her back and rub her head. I put the apple in my open hand. And she ate it in a single bite. Thank you for getting us to the castle. I was about to walk away when she turned her head and gave me the equivalent of a kiss on the side of my head. Hermione was glaring daggers at her. I went into the carriage and the carriage took off rather quickly. Do you have to be that nice to those kinds of creatures? I told her that the thestrals pull all the carriages for the students from 2nd to the 7th year. I would be impolite if I didn't show them some appreciation. I even told her I had friends that she would find scary. I had a dragon friend, a werewolf was in my hunting lodge, and I owned a home where my neighbors were in fact vampires. I even had a sort of demonic relative, but then again Uncle Ocelot doesn't like me calling him that. All in all, I told her I found thestrals no different than any of my friends, so that is exactly how I treat them, as my friends. The welcome banquet was nice as was the one last year, except for one thing, the idiot sitting at the faculty table. I guess hell was having a bit of a snowy season because for once I and Snape actually looked at each other and we both agreed on something. We both hated the notion of that clown teaching anything in the school. I was sorely tempted to go down to the chamber and asking my friend Nagisa to petrify the idiot, but then again I thought against it. She has a hard enough of a life without having to endure the trauma of looking at that thing. As you might notice, Gilderoy Lockhart has decided to put his career on hold and occupy the empty spot as a teacher of defense against the dark arts. I am certain that someone, as experienced as himself, would be able to bring his many years of experience. As almost on cue, Gilderoy Lockhart stood up and looked at the student body. Thank you, Headmaster, it will be an honor to educate and let the students learn from my vast experience and knowledge. To those that don't know, I am Gilderoy Lockhart, an honorable member of the Light Defense League, and 5 times consecutive winner of the most dazzling smile by Witch Weekly. I could not help but think that he was if anything an idiot with an overinflated ego. I was so disgusted by the presence of that moron that I decided to ask for something to help calm my stomach. Apparently the only thing the house elves had was a blue milky drink, and when I saw Snape getting the same thing, I held up my glass and so did he as we both nodded and drank it in one gulp. I swear the thing tasted foul, but compared to Gilderoy, basilisk venom would probably taste sweet. Come to think of it, maybe I will ask him if there was anything to save a person's life from ingesting basilisk venom. No, that would be too easy. Every idiot knows that a bezoar would save a person in that case. I decided to have something light for my meal and went down the corridor towards the dungeons, that is where one of my friends lived, inside the painting. As I looked at the portrait of Salazar, I found my friend and he slithered to be clearly visible. Something is bothering you, Harry. You never come to pay me a visit unless something really upsets you. So tell me, Harry, what could possibly upset you this much, so much that you pay me a visit on the first day of class? Not that I mind, you know you are always welcome to pay me a visit. I looked at him and began shaking my head. We have an absolute useless imbecile and he is supposed to be a teacher. If anyone other than the bloody Baron knows how I can deal with this pest, it is you. So how am I supposed to deal with this pest? How can I stomach having that thing teach me anything? My serpent friend seemed almost amused. He kept sliding from one side of the painting to the other till he finally stopped. I say, you don't need to dirty your hands on that piece of garbage. Use what my house is so well known for, be cunning. Let the fool talk, let him boast and let him make excuses. Their kind is always exposed in the end, the truth always comes out. Potter, your house entrance is on the other side of the castle. Mind telling me why you are here in the dungeons? I turned around and looked at Snape. He was clearly not in a good mood, neither was I, truth be told. I felt like I needed some moral support, and since the house ghosts and painting are too busy for the welcome of the first-year students, I decided to talk to a good friend of mine. Or should I wait here to tell you my troubles, Professor Snape? He looked at me and smiled. No, Potter, you should not tell me your troubles. That job is for your head of the house. I will make an exception tonight. You are probably frustrated at the notion that Lockhart will teach DADA. I admit I am not happy about being rejected once again from being allowed to teach that class. I looked at him and began shaking my head. Well, if you actually taught that class, who would teach potions? You do know that position is cursed, don't you? It doesn't take a genius to figure that it must be, since every teacher for over a decade has not lived to teach 2 years in that class. So you figured out that he who must not be named cursed the job of teaching that class, but you still don't like Lockhart teaching it. You know, if he remains for an entire year the world would be a much better place. At least it would be free of one credit-stealing clown. I began to walk away and asked him, would that really make such a difference when there were just so many like him out there in our crazy and magical world? I swear the man began to laugh as I walked away from him. Never thought that he actually had a sense of humor, even if it was a bad one. To say that the next few days were taxing was clearly something I would never say. It was a true test of my patience and my ability to control my temper. After a solid month taking lessons from that clown, it took everything in me first not to scream that he should have his head cut off and stuck on a pike, and at the beginning of the second month, I wanted to be the one to cut his head off. The things he wrote that book were a joke and not a terribly funny one. I seriously think this idiot could not fight out of a paper bag, wet paper bag. The Cornish pixies were a clear display of his abilities. If the idiot can't handle basic household pests, this was going to be a long year for me. In potions one day I flat out asked if someone could not slip a little Veritaserum into his juice. I would literally love for that to happen. I would ask him a single question that would expose him as the fraud I knew he was. Sadly, Professor Snape said that it would take too long to get the needed ingredients and the brewing was nothing to sneeze at. At the very least I had a heated discussion with Hermione about elf rights, and about her newest crush. At least she appeared to have a crush. She actually marked all dates Lockhart was going to teach with heart marks on her calendar. That pretty much reduced my appetite considerably. Myrtle was nice enough to tell me that as much as she would be happy to cause him a few scares, she really didn't want to be anywhere near him. That should tell you how bad a person he is. Not even the spirit of the dead wanted to be near the man. I honestly wish I had that option too. I sent a wordy letter to the Prophet telling them should they even think about printing a picture of me and that clown, there would be hell to pay. To say that he was surprised when he tried to sell them a picture like that would be hilarious. He was actually complaining about it with Professor Snape while they ate breakfast one day. I guess the old Potter share of profit stocks is useful sometimes after all. My classes were at most boring. I was permitted to try and brew the truth potion I asked Professor Snape for, and he was, of course, 100% right. The potion was a very difficult potion to make, but since the dungeon was the only place Professor Professor Lockhart would always avoid, I had a very private place to brew my potions. One night, after a long night of trying to cut back on the ingredients and time needed to brew the potion, I came across something that was hanging from one torch holder. It was none other than Mrs. Norris, and something was written on the wall. It seemed to be BLD. The last thing I needed was Filch finding us, and screaming like a maniac that I had murdered his friend. I told him to calm down, that the cat was petrified. Of course, he didn't believe me and had every teacher come and see the horrible crime I had committed. He honestly wanted to have me executed. It took Albus telling them that I was right, the cat was petrified, and that someone my year would not even know how to cast the spell required. The message made no sense to me. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened, enemies of the air beware. This makes absolutely no sense to me at all. I spend at least 2 hours a week in that chamber, and the so-called beast in said chamber is my good friend. I mean, hell, she even said that she was willing to become my second familiar. That basilisk is as friendly as you can get. Honestly, she even asked Myrtle to forgive her. She only looked at her because Myrtle actually startled her and caused her quite a fright. In truth, ever since Myrtle and she met, they actually became rather good friends. I kid you not, she actually spends more time talking with her than I do. That chamber is a treasure trove for people like me. There are books the school doesn't even know they have. I just know they are going to try and use this as a means to humiliate me or to punish me for my not so flattering comments about Professor Lockhart's teaching ability or lack of thereof. I woke up early and decided to have a brief and early breakfast. The last thing I needed was someone making fun of me. Yes, I am an heir of Salazar Slytherin, and truth be told, I am quite proud of that fact. Salazar did have some very valid reasons why his anger against teaching Muggle-born wizards and witches. Let's just say it, if someone butchered and burned my wife and children like they did, would I feel any different? Everyone kept making heated arguments about what the supposed beast was, and who was going to be the next victim. Some even mentioned what I was thinking, that I was indeed a descendant of Slytherin. When asked, I told them that in fact, I was. Big mistake on my part, I was just being honest. Muggleborn were avoiding me like I had leprosy. Honestly, Harry, why waste your venom on a cat of all things? There are plenty of mudbloods to take care of. I had enough with the whispers, and maybe it was my quick temper, but I decided to look at him with as much killer intent as I could muster and told him the message said enemies of the air. That didn't mean pureblood wizards or witches could not also be considered enemies of the air. For the next 3 days, I had to put up with George and Fred making fun of me. The only reason I put up with it is that it was funny. One day they kept following me, and Fred said, that evil wizard coming through, he is probably going to meet with the beast of the chamber to see who is going to be attacked next. I turned around and looked at them both, just when I was outside Myrtle's place of residence. Actually, you are quite right, I am having a meeting in the chamber. Do you boys want to come and meet my friend that lives in the Chamber of Secrets? I wish you would, it would be such jolly good fun. They both pretended to run away, acting like they were scared. I turned around and walked into the bathroom. Myrtle, I am going to meet with our friend, do you want to come along? I think our friend might be a little upset that people are calling her a beast and blaming her for what happened to that cat. As it turns out, I was right. You think that snakes can't be sad because they can't cry, but my friend was truly hurt, sad, and angry. It took me 20 minutes to calm her down and explain that something had petrified a cat, and wrote a disturbing message on a wall. She told me it was impossible for anyone to order her to do that, and she would never do that unless if she felt threatened. The last time she did, she felt horrible about it for years. Myrtle told us it was the day she died, and she knew she was being honest, large part why Myrtle and she became such good friends. I knew there were 3 methods to petrify someone. First was the eyesight of a basilisk. With that ruled out, there were only 2 left, a spell, but who would hurt that cat with a spell? The last was a potion, but that required the BLD of a basilisk and not in a small quantity either. So the spell was probably the method they chose to petrify Mrs. Norris. All that week I had a horrible feeling that it was going to be something like a Death Eater that did this, or someone being controlled by the wrath of Tom. The other thing I felt bad about was that Professor Sprout would have to cultivate some mandrakes and that whoever petrified our Mrs. Norris should have done the world a favor and petrified Gilderoy Lockhart instead. I wouldn't have to listen to him read his own book at us. You might say I am biased, and maybe you are right, I am a little, after all I am only human, but the man was an absolute failure as far as I could remember. The man was really such a pathetic failure, and some of the stuff he says in those books are utter rubbish. Since the spectacular failure of his first class, we would be forced to endure what I should say a more lecture form of teaching. To me it had another name for it altogether. I called it nap time. I swear listening to that idiot talk about all that stuff in the book he was holding would make anyone fall asleep. Well, anyone that didn't have Hermione Granger poking at my ribs with her wand every time I was about to fall asleep. I am not kidding, she kept poking at me trying to keep me from falling asleep. I know she is doing this to keep me from getting horrible grades and preventing me from losing house points, and I can see that she truly was a good friend, but at times I want to stun her and so that I could just take my nap. There was nothing to learn from that fool. Potions finally came, and for some, they felt that I was insane. I actually was looking forward to my class with Snape, believe or not. At least there I would learn something useful. Transfiguration class was a joy. Charms, I simply loved the way our professor did such a wonderful job of explaining everything. My history professor was actually shocked to see that I was paying attention. To be honest, after an hour of listening to Lockhart, nothing in this world could be as boring or as horrible as that. So Potter, tell me, how are you enjoying being taught by such a world-recognized celebrity? I looked at Snape and tried very hard not to smile. After 2 classes with him, I honestly wish they would fire him and make you the teacher of that class, Professor. At least then I would learn something. I don't think to learn what his favorite food, or what is his favorite song, is going to be useful to get a good job at the ministry. He looked at me much like my esteemed ghost professor. And what would you like to learn here today in this class? I told him without even blinking how to make Veritaserum would be a potion I would very much love to learn to make. Snape looked at me and began to nod his head. As much as I would love to teach you that potion, Potter, it is a potion that is controlled by the ministry, and it is considered a Newt level class. You must gain an O for your OWL level test to even be considered to take that class. If you keep up with your current grades, I don't see why you should not attend my Newt potion class when the time comes. I felt rather disappointing. A single drop of that potion and the braggart that is Lockhart would finally be exposed. As the year went by and I spent more time in the chamber, I finally met who it was that had been petrifying all these people. It was Ginny. Well, in reality, it was the memory-possessing Ron's sister. Both my friend were rather angry that the memory of the current Dark Lord was doing all this. My basilisk friend was practically hissing up a storm. I simply can't repeat some of the things she was screaming at the image that came out of that moldy diary. In truth, I can say what she was saying, but a gentleman does not talk like that in front of a lady, even if one of those ladies was really that angry. When that memory called her nothing more than a useless tool, she did something I never expected. She spits venom at Ginny, causing her to drop the book. The venom did not touch her, but as the book fell, my good basilisk friend bite that book clean in half. I don't know about you, but seeing a basilisk destroy that book and ruining the plans of Voldemort was amazing. The other thing was that it was proven, the position of Professor of Dada is cursed. Turns out that the memory of Voldemort did have one victim after all. Gilderoy Lockhart was found petrified and quite dead. He was found outside by the looks of it, handing out signed autographed photos of himself. The only weird thing is, why didn't he have any clothes on and his face had this smile on his face? All in all, it was not the way I would have wanted him to go. It was far too peaceful. The man deserved to suffer, especially since I actually found how he obtained the information for his books. The guy kept a rather detailed journal, and wouldn't you know it, he actually wrote in his last will that I would be the one to inherit said journal. To make matters worse, the first page inside was a dedication, as it were, to Harry Potter, my biggest fan. I am not kidding, that is what he wrote in his journal. Yes, I sure hope hell has a warm and special place for him. My 4th year was about to start, and how did it start? The usual, I met with my good friends Neville and Hermione on the train, and we discussed how much fun we were going to have this coming year. No, that is how I wish my 4th year started. it actually started with me trying to comfort and give emotional support to my very depressed friend, who just learned her favorite author stole credit for everything he ever was accredited of achieving, well, not the dazzling Smile Award, he won that. I looked at her and placed my hand on her shoulder, her sobbing was really making me feel nervous. Oh come on Moyne, cheer up, our new Dada professor will be a lot better, that you could possibly do worse than a narcissistic, plagiarizing, bisexual Pefli. They would have to literally get the Dark Lord to teach that class. Neville told me not to say it out loud or it might happen. As far as I could remember, it was not supposed to be someone else in the compartment. He looked like he had not had a good night's sleep. I felt bad about him and I decided to use a summoning charm to bring out one of my blankets and placed it on him. As we traveled, the temperature of the compartment began to go down, and suddenly I felt like I was at the home of my aunt and uncle, that is when a person wearing a hood came in and I knew who, or more importantly what it was. The Dementors know the language of snakes, and since I was technically a dark wizard I looked at both of them as they came to the door. I demand to know what is the meaning of this. One of the Dementors came close to me and tried to make me fear her, it was not working. The other looked at me and began nodding his head. I was not happy about this one bit. I imagine our new professor could use some sleep, I didn't want him to lose that chance for nonsense. We apologize, young man, we are searching for an escaped criminal. He is the one named Sirius Black, a man accused of being a mass murderer. Is someone here by that name? I told him no, there is no one by that name here, the only man here was Professor Lupin. She told me that I was a liar and was more than likely protecting the criminal. That is when I touched my ring. You better tell your partner to be careful of whom she decides to insult. I will make you pay for such insults if you continue to insult me. I shall not allow such dishonor to remain unpunished. Professor Lupin was actually quite proficient in his subject. I know the position is cursed and all, but deep down I hope he remains as our instructor of Dada. It would make the time spent in that class at least bearable. Snape kept making all kinds of suggestions about someone having to take a potion each month, and about having a furry little problem. To me the one with a furry little problem was the rat that slept near Ron. Somehow I just didn't like that rodent, and from the way it always looked at me, the feeling was mutual. It took me the grand total of 3 weeks to find out why the Dementors were stationed at every entrance. The people that placed them there were absolute idiots. To Dementors all the students were an all-you-can-eat buffet. I know also that Sirius Black was actually one of the people who made the map, so if anyone knew the many entrances into the castle, he was one of them. As for Professor Lupin, I had to do something that was not pleasant at all, and thankfully the man was more forgiving than others with his condition. I had developed a brand that had the same magical qualities as the potion he needed, so one night I was told to take to his classroom a tall pitcher full of coffee. I, of course, added something to it, and that made the man fall unconscious the second he tasted it. The second that he was on the floor I took off his top and began to cast the spells needed to silence the area and burn the brand on his back. The second that he was awake he looked at his back, he then began to laugh at me like I had done something extremely funny. Honestly Harry, if you wanted to give me a wolf tattoo you only needed to ask. I told him to take a close look at it. That is when he decided to actually use 2 mirrors to do just that. He was speechless after I finished my cup of coffee. You still think this is just a tattoo? I guess this pretty much takes care of your furry little problem, as Snape was so happy to tell us, and why tonight is a full moon. You didn't have the potion, did you? Well, do you feel any different? He was not expecting it, but he did transform into his wolf form. Since he didn't attack me, I would call that a success. For a second the large wolf looked confused, and then he began to smile. That is right, Professor Lupin, you have no reason to worry about student safety. Now mind telling me, where is Sirius Black? He looked at me and after he finished changing he told me he honestly had no idea, but since the Dementors were on his trail he thought he must be somewhere in the castle. I guess Remus Lupin simply does not trust me. I guess I shouldn't expect any better than that. I saw Scabbers running through the corridor. I cast a stunner on the rat and began doing diagnosis spells on it. Sure enough, I knew exactly what that thing was. It was no rat at all, just a man that believed to be dead. There is one place everyone would avoid like it was cursed, the one place not even the people that live in the village near the castle would come near. I took hold of the rat and decided to go to the Whomping Willow. I reduced myself in size and went through the opening in the trunk of the tree. I evaded a few good strikes from the tree and managed to make it into the Shrieking Shack. As soon as we got in, I cast the counterspell and we were both back to normal size. The rat was under a full body bind spell, nothing he would try would let him get free. Mr. Sirius Black, Harry James Potter, sorry for the unannounced visit. Remus Lupin should have told me where to find you. I believe we have to call the ministry and have them examine this rather long-lived rat, or should I say have them examine Wormtail. He came out of hiding and I had to admit the man looked horrible. He had clear signs of malnutrition and his clothes looked like rags he put together from stuff he picked out of the garbage. Harry, you don't know how happy I am to hear you say that, you know I am your godfather. As soon as we entered the office of the headmaster, he called for Cornelius Fudge to come. Cornelius, of course, thought that we were there to hand over the fugitive. Too bad for him Amelia Bones was also with him, and I asked her to give Sirius some truth potion to ask him a few questions. Under the effects of the potion, he confirmed that he was not or ever was the secret keeper of my family, that it was Peter Pettigrew. I placed the rat and did the spell to reverse him to his human form. He was being protected by some magic power I had no idea where it was coming from, so Albus Dumbledore and Susan Bones decided to help me by casting the spell on the rat as well. Sure enough, the rat began to change and where once was a rat, there was a man dressed in rags, and his face had quite a few rodent-like features. The effect of the 3 spells had that it overpowered my full body bind and Peter tried to run away, till I pointed my wand in his direction. Run Peter, and you will wish you had died. Make no mistake, there is no escape. You will receive no mercy, we will know the truth and then you will wish a Dementor had kissed you, that will be merciful compared to what I shall do to you. He turned around and walked toward Susan Bones. He tried to use all manner of excuses but in the end, he was made to take the same potion Sirius had taken. He confessed everything, the mass murder of the Muggles, biting his own finger off, revealing the location of the Potter home in Godric's Hollow. He even revealed that he had secretly been a rat to aid his MSTR in keeping an eye on me. Minister Fudge had no alternative but to dismiss all the charges against Sirius Black on the spot and reward him with a sizable fortune as payment for wrongful imprisonment. Peter, seeing that he would be sent to Azkaban for the deaths of quite a few people, decided to beg me to forgive him, thinking that would make me help him. The only thing that managed to do was to make me angrier. The second that rat was able, he took hold of the wand of the head Auror, that being Susan Bones, and looked at me with a sinister smile. He tried to cast the killing curse, as he screamed he would finish what his MSTR always intended to do. I had once reflected the killing curse as a child, but that was thanks to the protection of my mother, but this time I had complete control of my faculties, and I was not the naive child he thought I was. I deflected that curse and this time with precision, and killed him instantly. Looks like I was no longer going to be able to live in the castle anymore. Thanks to the fact that Sirius Black was innocent and is the head of his ancient and noble house, I was told that under the law I was to live with him. Personally, I had already finished reading all the books in the library. It would be nice to talk with my godfather. Ron was less than happy to hear that his pet rat was actually a full-grown wizard, mass murderer, and according to Sirius suspected Peffley. Dumbledore at the end of the year decided to buy Ron an owl as a replacement pet. Hermione kept asking me questions. How in the world did I ever figure out Scabbers was not a rat at all? I told her that several paintings had told me how strange the rat was behaving, and I remember that a person could take an animal form. In truth, my familiar saw the rat turn into a human to speak into a mirror he carried, but I was not going to tell Hermione that. Well, let's say that the home of my godfather had a few things that reminded me of a Russian prison I had to infiltrate once. The painting of his mother was making me remember a rather nasty warden I knew. Funny thing is that under that supposedly horrible personality was actually a great guy. By the end of my mission we became rather a good friend. Now that I think of it, I wonder how Sergei is doing these days. His mother had quite a few things to shout at me until I aimed my weapon at her and told her that a single shout, a single insult and I would send her to a place, not even the devil would save her from. The elf was upset that I said such things and kept insulting me. in truth I also saw the mounted heads on the wall. I have a slight suspicion that this house elf wants me to do exactly the same thing to him. I did my best to smooth things over with the painting, and as soon as both heard that I was in fact not as naive or as shall we say innocent about the world, they both magically began to have a sunnier disposition about me living in the house. Sirius would not stop asking me about my many different adventures. I warned my godfather that my activities were not the typical norm. I told him that many of the things would be shocking to him. Did he listen? No, he did not. He simply told me that after so many years in a prison where the guards were soul-sucking, happiness-devouring fiends, how much worse could be the thing I have to say compared to what he lived through. I did my best to keep all the classified details of my many missions, and by the end of 1 week, he was asking if no, begging me not to mention anything more. I worked as a mercenary. Should it really surprise him that much that I had to kill so many people? Turns out I had a larger kill count that he did, and that made him actually worry about me that much more. I told him repeatedly that I had no problem with what I did. Mostly I took out criminal cartels, revolutions, civil unrest, and a few dozen other situations, from DRG cartels to human trafficking. I told him that during the time before I entered Hogwarts I considered myself the world's janitor, 'cause the only thing I did was take out the garbage, clean the messes that other fools made. And had they not erased the memories of my adoptive father, I would still be doing things like I told him I did. Harry, life is precious, it is something that should be protected, and lethal force such be used as a last resort. For a person who spent so much time in prison, my godfather's beliefs were too soft-hearted for a person that went through what he did. I asked him if he would be that merciful to a group that kidnapped a bus full of teenage girls, forced themselves on them, force-feed them DRGs, all to make them addicts and work in one of their warehouses. There are lives that must be saved, Godfather. I don't disagree with that, but there are people that are by nature so vile, so crooked, that the idea of repenting and becoming decent people does not even cross their minds. These people are the garbage I told you about, and to save the lives of 110 of these crooks dying is not such a heavy price to pay. The magical world considers me a hero. I am no hero, I am a cleaner. By taking out the rotten and despicable criminal groups, I, in fact, made the world a safer place. You know, if you think about it, you know what I say is true. You just need to realize that while life is precious, some people need to die. I didn't waste my time in between school years. I secretly began a hunt of my own, to keep busy as it were. I needed to do something. This civilian life was making me feel like my skills were getting rusty. As of yet I have found all and destroyed all but one of the hideous items that my enemy made. Honestly, to butcher your soul simply to avoid death, you can't avoid it. Well, even death will one day die after all. As I went back to school I was greeted by the very same Thestral that had been pulling the carriage each year. I was grateful, at least I meet one of my friends. The welcome feast was the same as always, people glaring at me from one table, and others laughing as they shared some funny stories as they went to share what they did during their vacation. I knew something else would go terribly wrong this year. At least it kept my time in the school from being too boring. I looked at Dumbledore, and sure enough he didn't look as happy as he always seems to be for some odd reason, and for some odd reason I didn't mind that much. Welcome to our new students and our returning students. I have to tell you some grim news. The Triwizard Tournament is going to be held this year, and our school has been chosen to host it. The means to select those that will participate will be brought shortly. For those that are unfamiliar with this tournament, it was first established as a means for schools all over Europe to establish friendly relations and demonstrate their academic and magical talent. Sadly, only 3 schools ever agreed to participate. That is when 4 house elves began to bring in a rather large and rusty-looking goblet. I swear the thing looked like it was used by a giant in the Roman age. The thing, as soon as it was set on the podium, began to make spark come out of itself. This is the Goblet of Fire. As you can tell, it is an ancient magical artifact. An age line is being drawn as I speak. When the other schools arrive, each school shall be allowed to have each student that wish to participate place their name in the goblet. Be certain that you wish to participate, cause it is a magical contract. Failure means you lose your magic. As a safety precaution, all 3 schools have decided that only students from the 5th year and up shall be allowed to enter. While this tournament is to foster friendship, I am sad to inform you that in the past it has claimed the lives of several of the people that participate in it. Now for our 3 resident troublemakers, I would suggest that you stay away from the goblet or suffer the consequences, for you see it is not I who will punish you, it will be the goblet, and this particular artifact is not as forgiving as I. The very next day we actually were told to wait outside as we watched as the other 2 schools arrived. The flapping of wings was heard and we saw as a giant carriage being pulled by 4 giant Pegasus landed on the ground. Dumbledore went to the carriage as the door opened and a rather large witch came out of the carriage. "Ah, Olymp, nice of you to grace us with your presence. I imagine Igor will show up shortly. I hope you had a wonderful and uneventful ride getting here." Sure enough, as he said that the lake began to warp and shift as if something rather large was coming out of, a ship that looked like a sunken pirate ship came out of it, and as soon as the gangplank was set, a rather well-dressed man wearing a fur coat came from the ship. Both schools had a rather large group of students. I guess we were so focused on the large woman with the French accent that we didn't even notice when her students came out of the carriage. Well, she is rather big, that is true, she was rather attractive, come to think of it. Oh, I am not talking about the headmistress, although she is quite pretty. I mean the blonde witch that was doing a marvelous job of giving us all a cold glare, and even her own classmates were giving her a lot of personal space. Morgana warned me immediately to put up my defenses, that the woman I called secretly the Ice Queen was in fact not that cold. I was warned that she was, in fact, Avila. I knew the reason for the warning immediately. The aura was said to have quite an effect on men, and seeing that the men around me were slowly turning into something of a bunch of drooling idiots, I guess her aura is instinctual rather than something that she must use, or maybe she has her aura active all the time and she stopped noticing. She walked over to me and I don't know why, but her blue robe seemed to shift into an even more revealing form, and I was getting quite an eyeful of her figure and her heaving melons. That is strange, I never expected to find someone that can resist my aura. She looked at my eyes for a second before she and her headmistress walked into the school while talking in something I rather call a rather fast-paced conversation in French. Too bad for them, I knew French quite well. Igor looked like he was staring at me like I was nothing more than a bug as he and his students entered. One of his students was looking at me in a rather challenging way. I hope the idiot tries to challenge me to a duel. I really hope so. I haven't had a decent fight in years. Well, all aside, once you look past her chilly exterior, that French witch was talking about something we both actually agree on. Yes, I rather wish I never came to this castle at all. I had a wonderful job, a warm family, a very lively and interesting group of friends, co-workers, and allies, and here the most interesting thing is my chats with a basilisk and my good friend and familiar Morgana. So yes, I do miss outer heaven. The one thing that she mentioned that did catch me by surprise is that her family name was Delacour. That is funny. I knew a man named Francis Delacour once. He was married and we met several times. He was a rather nice supplier for us in the past. He did sell ammo at quite reasonable prices now that I think of it. He never mentioned having any kids now that I think of it. Well, who can blame the man? If I had a daughter I would certainly not want her to know I am an arms dealer that sells to the most feared mercenary group in the entire world. I can't help but feel a bit curious if this young woman was related to my old friend. As breakfast was now over I decided to go over to her and ask her if she was related to my old friend. As soon as I was anywhere near her she just stopped me by giving me the international sign for me to stop. Yes, I am appealing, yes, I am hot, no, I don't have a boyfriend, lover, or future husband, and no, I am not looking to establish a relationship or want to sleep with you. Boy, this girl really, and I mean really, must be bothered by idiots. It's my friend Quiet often tells me, if a young woman wants to be with you romantically or just for casual sec, she will make it quite clear of her intentions either by her actions or she will flat out tell you. I think about enough one-night stands to actually say that I knew that to be true. Actually, what I wanted to know if you are related to Francis Delacour. He owns this shipping and supply company. I think his office is in Paris. She actually looked at me and looked like she began thinking about something. After a few seconds, she told me that indeed she was his daughter. Great, since you are his daughter, could you tell him to send me my usual supply shipment to this castle? Tell him to charge it to the Potter student vault and tell him that Fenris sends him his best regards and a delayed birthday congratulations. I have not been able to contact him in a few years. That is when she was the one that looked at me with a bit of interest. Did you say your name was Potter? Don't you mean to tell him Snake wants his supplies sent here? Color me impressed. I guess she does know what her father does for a living, and she even knew my correct call sign. I guess today was not such a bad day after all. This gave us something in common to talk about. It seems she also knows that my family and her had established a marriage contract between our families. I never understand why did our families decide to do something like that. Father often said it was just a matter of survival. It was not that uncommon for noble families to do that. Since we established that my primary interest was civil and at the moment not anywhere near what anyone would call a matter dealing with reproduction, we became rather civil, almost friends I could say, almost being that she was quite adamant that we speak in French only. Guess that hatred between England and France is alive and kicking. For some odd reason Professor Lupin actually quit as the previous year ended. Who am I kidding? The position of teacher of data is cursed. Even I can tell from the track record of teachers dying under, shall we say, unconventional reasons. You stay for 2 years as a teacher in that class, you will die before the second year you teach is over. Hermione and Neville actually were pretty friendly with Fleur as soon as the introductions were over, and Hermione, in general, was if anything curious about Vila culture and social differences. Neville was hit so hard by her aura that I honestly felt sorry for the guy. He made a complete fool of himself trying to ask her out on a date. My friends were getting along well, while Hermione was a bit colder when we began discussing the idea behind the marriage contract, and even colder when she told us that the contract would enter into effect the second I reached the age of 17, meaning the contract stipulated that the only way the contract would be made null and void is if both families' firstborn was of the same gender. Since that was clearly not the case, the contract would become enforceable when I hit the age on the contract. I, of course, mentioned to her that I could actually die long before that happens, and for some reason, Fleur was not actually happy to hear me say that. Well, that was a rather quick change in attitude if I do say so myself. 1 second she thinks I am trying to get laid, and next she gets upset that I mentioned that I could die before we are forced by this contract to tie the knot. It might be because the people in the ministry did not erase the memories of me from Francis, and Morgana was quite sure he told Fleur quite a few things that somehow made me quite a good prospect as a future mate or husband. The fact that I could block of her aura regardless how strong she sent it my way probably helped too. The new professor could only be described in one way: he was a bloody nightmare. I am not kidding, this guy makes even Lockhart seem like less of an actual security risk. Can't believe I am actually talking about that clown in a positive way. Professor Alastair Moody was one of the most brutal, bloodthirsty Aurors that ever existed. Most Aurors did their best to capture the criminals. Moody brought them back in a bag smaller than most fast food restaurant takeout bags. I am not making this up, I am not exaggerating when I say the man was a nightmare. He was known to jinx, curse and hex things in his yard simply because he heard a noise. I think I lost count of how many times the prophet actually wrote articles how the man killed the people he chased after. You can say one thing about the man: he knew the dark arts almost as well as anyone could. He was often mistaken for being the hidden Dark Lord. The man was not without his flaws. He lost his eye during a fight with a pack of werewolves. That's right, he fought an entire pack of werewolves and his only injury was he lost one of his eyes. Many people after he retired were feeling both fortunate and afraid what he would do since he could not go after his favorite prey anymore, meaning dark wizards and dark witches. He was even given the nickname that solidified his infamy, Mad Eye Moody. I would expect anything from this man, except that his first class was on the unforgivable, and to my shock Dumbledore according to him had given him permission to use these forbidden spells on his students. If this was his first class, what would he pick for his next class? Gargle with basilisk venom? Take yarn spinning lessons with an acromantula? Evasion practice with a vela? He decided to insult the previous night and blame us for it. I know the unforgivable like he did, and to make matters worse these spells usually carry a life sentence for even casting them, where he was given free rein to use them on unsuspecting students. I began to wonder if this was more to do with the fact to make the students of Drumstrang have a better opinion of our school than to actually prepare my fellow students to the dangers of these spells. I, of course, answered every single question he asked, even broke through the effects of one of them like it was nothing. In truth, the Imperius curse was not something that most people could resist, but then again if I could survive the killing curse, that mind control curse was next to nothing to me. For some odd reason, I could tell that Moody was not as happy or proud as he tried to look to my fellow classmates. After 1 week of hearing about the great and magnificent Bulgarian seeker, I knew one thing: I never, and I mean never, am going to buy tickets to a World Quidditch Cup game if two things happen. 1. Bulgaria actually made it to the finals and Victor Krum was the seeker for their team. The man was so self-centered that he actually managed to make their team lose, and still he behaved like he was the best thing in the world since sliced bread. Finally, the goblet began to send sparks and we all knew that the naming of the champions was close at hand. We barely managed to eat dinner when the goblet began to scent the first burned piece of parchment in the direction of Dumbledore's chair. The first name was, of course, Victor Krum, big surprise that he would want to participate in the tournament. The second name was Fleur Delacour, who looked as happy as an actress who just won an Oscar. She too went to the room behind the staff table. The third was Cedric Diggory, and let me tell you, I have never seen his house look or show their pride better than when Cedric got up and went to join his fellow champions. I for a second felt relieved that I was not going to get dragged into the tournament. I know perfectly well that that tournament was an easy way to trap me and get me killed. I was under no illusion that this tournament was nothing more than a death trap. As I sat down and began to feel relief that the 3 champions had been selected, the goblet began to send sparks again, and I had a dreadful feeling about this. The goblet sent the 4th piece of parchment towards Dumbledore, who looked at it and looked in my direction before declaring the 4th champion was none other than myself. I was not even given an opportunity to tell them that this must be a mistake. I was told to go where the other champions were waiting and we would hear what was going on as soon as possible. As I entered, Victor was leaning against a fireplace, probably talking with his parents to tell them he was chosen. Fleur was reading a book she picked from one of the bookshelves in the room. Cedric was the only one that came towards me, but he probably thought that I was sent as an errand to tell them to return to the Great Hall. I was so furious that had I been a dragon I would be breathing fire and causing the entire castle to burn to ashes. That is how angry I felt. Cedric came towards me and once he saw my eyes he gave me plenty of personal space. I sat down on one of the armchairs and I pity the idiot that tried to tell me to get up and leave the room without telling me what the bloody hell was going on. The act of placing my name in the goblet had ensured that I had to participate or suffer a punishment worse than death. I think our janitor Mr. Filch could tell you how horrible his life has been so far. Dumbledore, the other 2 headmasters, Snape and Moody came into the room and they all marched where I was sitting. I have only one question, Harry, please be as honest as you can. Did you enter your name into the goblet? I for one felt absolutely insulted by having him ask me that question. Why didn't he ask me if I wished to take a nose dive into an active volcano while he was at it? I know the history of this tournament. Members of my family have died participating in it. I would have to be absolutely insane to even consider entering this particular tournament. So in short, whether some of you believe me or not, I did not enter my name or even came close to the goblet. Bagman was once a very successful Quidditch player. He really hit the sauce and strapped the old feed bag by the looks of it. He looked like nothing how he once looked in his Quidditch uniform. I could also tell he was the one that was supposed to enforce the rules of this tournament by the book he had under his arm. That doesn't matter. The fact remains that since his name came out of the goblet, he must participate or suffer the punishment for failure to participate, the loss of his magic for the remainder of his entire life. I would like to know how in the world did the goblet send out one extra name. There were supposed to be only 3 champions after all. Moody looked happy, and I mean really happy. A particularly strong confundus charm could have tricked the goblet into thinking that there were 4 schools participating rather than 3. I still think that Potter might have done it himself. Out of all the students in Hogwarts I do believe he is the only one proficient enough in the dark arts to pull something like that off. Snape looked at me and then at Moody. I do not believe Harry would do such a thing. I myself also know that his family has indeed endured the tragic loss of several family members to the tournament. As the last surviving member of his ancient and noble house he would never take that risk, and nothing he could win it would be incentive enough for him to try. He has fame and wealth enough that the prize for this tournament would mean nothing to him. I am more worried that someone wanted him to participate to get one of my best students killed. Headmaster, I must ask that the goblet is examined immediately and that at the very least I be allowed to aid Harry in this tournament. Compared to the other champions he would be in a clear disadvantage, for simple fairness if you must think of it like that. Dumbledore looked at him and began to shake his head. I am sorry Severus, but I must deny that heartfelt request. The staff of the participating schools must remain impartial and only may advise one student, the student that is the champion of the school the instructor teaches in. In this case, you may only advise Mr. Diggory. I knew only one thing. I was angry enough that this entire conversation had little to any meaning for me. All I wanted at that moment was to learn the name of the fool that placed my name in the goblet of fire, because once I learned that person's name, there would be nothing on this world that would save that fool from my wrath. Well, I was happy that Morgana was still with me. Let's face it, after I was declared champion, every student within Hogwarts had the obvious reaction. One group called me a glory hog, another called me a disgrace and was doing Hogwarts a dishonor by being named, and that group was the house that was supposed to represent loyalty. I am sure Godric Gryffindor is not happy about this. The people I thought would be the least vocal with their negative remarks was my own house, but then again they are children who never seen the horrors of combat or ever faced a situation that was dangerous, if not at worst life-threatening. I also both of my friends. Neville was not speaking with me since his failure to actually gain any sort of romantic attention from Fleur, and hearing that we were effectively engaged pretty much sent my friendship with Hermione down in flames. Everyone was envious that I got a get-out-of-class privilege. I honestly would rather be in those boring classes that have to be in this damnable tournament. Truth be told, anyone who I told this said something to the same, that I was lying through my teeth. The first challenge we faced was actually having our wands examined. Nothing makes a person feel better than to have their privacy so thoroughly violated. Every spell that they ever cast laid bare and reported on the newspaper the next day. I did say they had to deal with, but not me. I didn't use a wand, didn't need one, and was more of a hindrance than help. This was also a plus since Ollivander had no idea how to make my rifle react the same way a wand would. This gave me a very big advantage when it came to combat. Nobody knew exactly what I could do, or how dangerous my magic really was. Morgana still complained that there was no guarantee they were actually having their main wands examined. I had to agree with my friend that could indeed be the case. The only reason I attended the entire thing was to find if one of them had placed the Confundus charm on the goblet. Make no mistake, once I find who it was I will kill that person, and in the most painful manner possible. Father often told me showing mercy to an enemy is a costly mistake that often caused more harm to yourself than good. The first challenge was a duel, and let's face it, most of the other champions had no real experience in the ways of war or combat, or at least not to the extent I did. I took my rifle to the dueling platform only to be told that I could not use a Muggle-made contraption. I placed it in the seal by on my right wrist. Too bad for them, my rifle had been fitted with RBB bullets. This would keep the damage down, but since the referee told me I could not use it, the damage my opponent suffered could blame it on him. I opened my hands and lightning arcs began to fly out of my fingers, and after I was sure everything was ready I saw the shocked look of Cedric as he tried to cast his spells at me. I say try to be kind, he was failing miserably at it. I could send the spells anywhere I wished with a simple motion of my hand. I had complete control of the air. Anything that flies was pretty much telling me, here, take my spell and use it however you want. After a few minutes I slammed my hands together, and when parted a large ball of lightning was seen hovering between my hands. I didn't wait a second before I sent that large shock ball against Cedric in the area around him. There was nowhere he could evade. No matter where he moved the spell would hit him. He was unconscious within seconds, and I stepped closer to him with my hands glowing with energy. That was when the referee decided to wake up and declare me the winner. Had he not done so, I was ready to kill my opponent. Like I said, mercy towards an enemy was a mistake I would not do. Fleur and Victor fought and I had the pompous pretty boy as my last opponent. He decided to begin by insulting my nation, my school, then he proceeded to insult me, but it was when he insulted my friends and called Fleur a high-priced whore that the kid gloves came off. As soon as the duel began I began to turn the entire dueling platform into a burning inferno. I was sending fire spells, columns of flames, molten pieces of the platform against Victor. Nothing could contain my rage, nothing he said could make me stop, no matter how he tried to evade my attacks, and when my attacks finally hit close to home, no matter how much he begged, and I made him beg for his life. All these pleas went unanswered and unheard. I didn't want victory, I wanted him dead. It took the combined might of all three headmasters to make my attacks end, and Victor was rushed towards the school nurse. I was declared the winner of the challenge but lost quite a few points due to the judges, the headmasters, taking points off for unnecessary cruelty. This is combat. If you can't handle the flames or the risk of getting burned, stay the hell out of the kitchen. The second challenge was a rather nice one. We had to face a dragon. We had a week between challenges. This gave me some time to talk with Fleur. For some reason me almost roasting the man that called her a high-priced were actually made her feel like it was endearing. She almost said that the only thing that I needed was a partial bird transformation and people would swear I was a Vila. We discussed the contract and she explained that her change in demeanor was because at first, she thought I was a weak suitor. After seeing me deal with my two opponents, however, that notion was pretty much as destroyed as the dueling platform had been during my duel with Victor. My friendship with Neville and Hermione turned for the worst when they saw me and Fleur do something they call snogging. I swear the kisses we were enjoying were modest. Let's face it, I have kissed women before in my life. It's not like they never seen a couple French kiss before. The second challenge, they had each of us take out a figurine from a pouch. Each had a miniature figurine of the dragon that we would face. The fact that the figurines were enchanted to move on their own was a nice gesture. I honestly only heard something about getting a golden egg from the dragon. I was too busy rubbing and touching the figurine to pay much attention. From the looks on the figurine, the horntail actually found the way I was touching it to be pleasant. As I came to face the actual dragon, I could swear that the dragon was looking at me with rather a big smile. Little did I know until she told me, the figurine was actually connected to her, and she felt everything I did to the figurine on herself. She told me she had a hard time not rolling around in the cage. I guess some of the places I touched were places where she was ticklish. I told her that I merely was trying to be friendly, and told her I wanted a golden egg that had been placed among her eggs. She just walked over to the egg I was pointing at, picked it up, walked back and placed it in my hand, wished me good luck and gave me a small peck on the right side of my face. Fleur was furious as she saw that, or so I think I saw as I walked back to the tent. Cedric turned a huge rock into a dog, and tried to distract the dragon. Fleur just sang a lullaby that caused most of the people watching to fall asleep and took the egg from the sleeping dragon. The fact that her robes were almost set on fire by the dragon's snoring was not helpful. Victor did exactly what I expected of him. He summoned giant boulders and beat the dragon till that poor dragon was knocked out. All the eggs crushed, and he simply walked over to get the only egg that remained almost intact. The way my relationship with Fleur was progressing was rather quickly. Then again, we were in a situation where either of us could die, so that was not something that was beyond the realm of possibility. The third challenge was for us to rescue someone from the bottom of a lake, a person that was taken and held hostage by the Mare people. With the way things were going, I will never understand why they thought that Hermione was the proper person to kidnap and I had to rescue. I guess they considered the fact I still believed she was my good friend, rather than what she thought of me. A partial transfiguration of my neck and I could breathe just fine. For anyone that wants to take a swim, the lovely sirens of the sea, I got two things to say. Yes, they are rather nice looking, and those scales are rather colorful, but they hunt in packs. They are smart, and they will use any means to get what they want. In short, if you swim with them without any means to defend yourself, it will be your funeral. They do prefer human males. Apparently, it is an acquired taste. After the even, I was told to meet with Alastair Moody. Something about needed to talk to me about the brutality of my attacks against Crumb and against a few of the sirens who wanted to take a bite out of me. He must not have known that I know two branches of magic that would be exposed to him. I was a MSTR at Legimancy and Acclimancy. With him so close I used both, and I knew in an instant that he was the one that placed me in the tournament. I knew he was not actually Alastair Moody, that he was, in fact, a follower of my enemy. He also was shocked when I called him by his real name, Barty Crouch Jr. We both fought against each other and he thought that since I was younger I would be an easy kill. Too bad for him. I killed him as Snape came into the classroom. I didn't even explain what was going on. I went to the trunk and using the right keys I opened the trunk. I went inside and found the very malnourished Alastair Moody missing his eye, and his prosthetic leg. I summoned both of them to us and gave them both to the man, who looked at me with a smile as he said his thanks for my timely rescue. To say that Dumbledore was not pleased with my method of dealing with Barty Crouch Jr. should be pretty much expected. The man would forgive Voldemort if he honestly apologized. I honestly can't stomach that sort of people, everyone is capable of cruel and evil deeds, no one is exempt of this, and no one can be completely innocent. We are born in sin and must battle each day to control our decision and live with the consequences of our actions. The final challenge was, if anything a joke to me, go through a maze chuck full of traps and dangers and make it to the goblet. The one who made it was declared the winner. My relationship with Hermione was beyond salvage. She simply was that upset that I and Fleur were getting, as she called it, more lovey-dovey by the moment. I guess the fact Fleur was my date for the ball was the final straw for her. Neville actually found a rather nice Hufflepuff girl to be in a relationship with. I have to say I am rather happy to have seen him be so happy with that young woman. Hufflepuff may be humble, but she sure can put her foot down when she wants something. After all, she was the one that asked him to the dance. The Sphinx was quite a beauty, I will not lie. She had golden fur, so silky made me wish I could run my fingers through it. Her voice was so calming it was hard to feel threatened by her. Her face was angelic. Well, she didn't have a halo, but as close you can get without one. Had I not been involved with Fleur, I would seriously flirt with her with no shame whatsoever. Her riddle was funny as hell, and I got to say she made me laugh as I figured it out. As I walked off she told me to turn around. As I did, she was right in front of me, gave me a French kiss that would make anyone blush 3 shades of red, and felt like that kiss changed something in me. I don't know what, something felt different. She told me she wished for my happiness, that in another life, another universe, she would find a way for us to be together. Honestly, I was taken back as she disappeared right before my eyes. She gave me a kiss, and pretty much declared her love of me. Boy, I hope Fleur didn't see that would take some serious explaining on my part, and many years of living through her teasing about that moment in my life. As I reached the goblet, so did she, and she told me Victor was under the Imperious curse. She saw Cedric fight him to the death trying to keep me safe. Cedric sacrificed himself so that I could live. I never expected that from him. We barely knew each other, and we only met thanks to the school Quidditch matches. I am going to miss flying against him. As we both touched the cup, we were both transported to what looked to be a graveyard. The entire ritual they were performing was horrible. Bone of the father, flesh of the follower, blood of the enemy. As I watched, Voldemort finally was among the living once again, and the final Horcrux, the one that I could not find, was near him, his familiar, a rather surly basilisk that was named Nagini. The first thing he did was look at Fleur, and without even a warning he blasted her with the killing curse. That moment time seemed to slow down for me. Nobody was going to tell Dumbledore that he was alive again. Nobody would stop him from achieving immortality thanks to the 3 deadly hallows. He told me as he gloated over this fact, and I knew one thing: if I was not going to make it back alive, I wanted at least one thing. I wanted this bstrd dead. I took hold of my rifle and loaded all of my anger, all of my hate, all of my sadness, and I aimed for his familiar, blasted that basilisk to pieces, which made him scream in agony. Guess me destroying those pieces of his soul actually affected him now that he had a body again. He sent against me one spell after another. The spells didn't harm me, and much as they made me feel stronger, made my pain and fatigue vanish with each spell he launched at me. As he screamed, why couldn't he kill me? He screamed that I should just die. I aimed true and shot him 3 times, one in the chest, one in the family jewels, and last right on his head. The man fell down and burst into flames, and the flames reacted with the spell he sent last and killed all the Death Eaters around us. I fell down and I was ready to accept that my end had come, when a circle of energy appeared underneath me. The green energy circle just sucked me in and I had no idea what was happening. As soon as I felt my body hit something that felt like grass, I saw something that I needed to get away from. Some strange girl I never even met, tried to kiss me. This made my senses go into overdrive, my skin crawl, and I knew nothing pleasant could come from her kissing me. I used my wandless magic to look inside her mind, and in a few seconds, I managed to decipher several important things. First, I was not in my dimension of reality. Second, they spoke a rather strange version of a long-dead language, and their writing made Japanese look easy to learn. Had I not looked into this girl's mind, I would have no clue on the language, written or verbal. The last but most important thing is their use of magic was severely limited, and anyone with a magic ability is considered a noble. I am not even kidding. If you have even the slightest ability to use magic, they would consider you a member of the nobility. The girl was trying to summon an animal to be her familiar if what her instructor was yelling at me, and instead she summoned me from another dimension. something they didn't realize, and the instructor actually wanted me to allow her to kiss me, to form a familiar contract. Morgana was not happy about this. Actually, she was furious enough that she wanted to peck her eyes out. She tried to kiss me again, and this time I kicked her leg in such a way to cause her to fall on the ground, hitting her face. "Excuse me, would I be incorrect in assuming you are this person's magic instructor?" A man came to help the girl up and looked at me. The man had some strange clothes, a staff, and a rather shiny orb, meaning he was completely bald and took great pride in his skin maintenance, as the skin on his head was very well taken care of. "That would be correct, young man. I am professor in this school and instructing the people around you in the summon familiar ritual. You may call me Professor Jean Colbert. Now mind me asking, why are you refusing to kiss my student Louise Françoise Leblanc de Lavalier? She did summon you using the summon familiar ritual. As such you should be considered her familiar even though you are a commoner." I was not going to let anyone force me into anything, and servitude to this girl was one thing I would not allow. Even Morgana told me from within the familiar mark that I was right. No one can force anyone or any creature to become their familiar against their will. I looked at the girl who was glaring at me and then at the professor. "Professor, you are mistaken if you think I am as a commoner. I am a fully trained mage. As such, by the laws and traditions in your own world, I cannot be forced to become the familiar of anyone, as I am a noble. She might have summoned me due to some accidental magic, but that does not negate the fact no noble may force another noble to become their familiar, regardless of spell or ritual used." I looked at him and he did nod his head as I finished saying this. "Would you mind telling me what kingdom you hail from?" I told him that I very much came from another reality, as in my reality my world only has one moon. I could clearly see the faint outline of 2 moons hidden by the light of the sun. "So how is it that you know of our traditions and language, young man? Do you have the same language and traditions in your own reality?" I told him that I used a branch of magic that dealt with mind reading to read the mind of the girl that he called Louise. I needed information to deal with the situation I found myself in, and reading her mind was the most expedient and reasonable solution, even if I do not like to do so. The situation basically forced me to do so. I would appreciate some manner of magic restorative. My magical core is rather drained at the moment. Professor Colbert began to rifle through his robes to what appears to me to look for the very medicine I requested. As soon as he began to look for the medicine, he was rudely pushed away by the girl I came to know as Louise. What a rude and ill-mannered girl. She didn't even apologize to her professor as she came towards me. It looks like she was going to try and kiss me again. It seems kissing would be needed to complete this ritual. Talk about invasion of my personal space. I do not believe anything this commoner has said. I summoned him using the summon familiar ritual, and such I will claim him to be my familiar. As loathsome as it is to have a commoner as a familiar, it is far worse the mere appearance that a member of my family could fail at something as basic as the summon familiar ritual. I honestly do not care if her entire family considers her a squib after this. I will not be forced to do anything against my will, and no matter the dimension, that is a personal belief I will always uphold. If you step another step closer to me, little girl, I will be forced to defend myself, and while my magic is low, I can still inflict upon you harm. Seize and desist in your flagrant attempt to make me your SLV. She, of course, ignored my warnings. I had no alternative but to use some wandless magic. For some odd reason my trusty rifle was not sent to the current dimension I found myself in. My magic focused on the grass that she was walking on, and in an instant the grass became longer, then it changed into chains, and finally they behaved like snakes and attacked Louise by acting like a bunch of boa constrictors. She found herself wrapped around by the hissing and tightening chains that had been grass a few seconds ago. The more she moved, the tighter the chains would become. These chains are enchanted to behave as if they are snakes, and snakes just happen to be good friends of mine. Since you didn't ask my name, allow me to introduce myself to you and the people present. My name is Harry James Potter. I did a bow and looked at the people around me, and then decided to open my shirt, and from the mark on my body, they no doubt thought it was a tattoo, came to my good friend Morgana. She stood quite proudly on my shoulder as she nipped my right ear in a show of clear affection. And this on my shoulder is my good friend and familiar Morgana. I hope this shows you that I am indeed a fully trained mage, and as such your claim to have me as your familiar is null and void. Morgana was glaring daggers at her, and for a second I was almost ready to kiss my good and loyal friend on her head. I guess I should not be feeling as down as I was. I still had my good friend Morgana. I still need to obtain an income or a way to earn a living. For some reason I don't think going back to my dimension for some reason is not that appealing to me. Morgana went back into the mark and told me thank you as soon as she saw what I thought of her. So Professor, I find myself in a bit of a problem, the first being that I need a place to live, and a way to earn myself an income, meaning I need a place to live and a job to earn a living. As I said, I am a fully trained mage, which includes potions, and some non-elemental magic that your universe clearly does not possess. The girl named Louise was still glaring at me, but I was at this point beyond even caring about the antics of a temperamental teenager. I was a true and tried warrior, a mage that had seen more combat in a day than she had seen in her entire lifetime. Let her try something, she will soon regret it if she survives. Colbert began to nod his head for a bit and then looked at me with a smile. I happen to dabble a little bit in alchemy myself. As for a job, why don't you accompany me to meet the headmaster of this school? He might come up with something to help you. I could see no reason why not to follow the man. As we walked through the building, I realized that this place was a lot more simple than Hogwarts. There were no ghosts, no spirits of any kind, which at first made me feel a bit lonely. Truth be told, I guess I will not be attending another Death Day party again. Shame, I always enjoyed them. This made me remember my fond memories of Myrtle, of Nick and the Baron. As we reached our destination, we reached a lady sitting behind a desk. I had to say, the bespectacled lady was quite attractive. I did however felt that something was not quite right with this green-haired beauty. There was something akin to a feeling of rage, a burning fury burning and churning deep inside her, so much so that made me wonder what could upset this person so much. Miss Longueville, this mage was summoned by mistake during my lesson on the summon familiar ritual. He has expressed that he needs employment and a place to reside. I felt it prudent to come and ask the headmaster. He might have a solution to this young man's problems. She smiled and got off her seat. I don't see a problem, the headmaster has plenty of free time. Now if you don't mind, I do need to know your name. Thank you, Professor Colbert, I can take care of this from now on. I did a bow and looked at her with a smile. Potter, Harry James Potter, a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Lady Longueville. I apologize for the inconvenience. She actually began smiling as I did that for some odd reason. She pushed the door open with her magic and we both entered to find a pipe-smocking version of Dumbledore. I mean it, the only thing missing is his glasses and colorful robes. As soon as we stepped near the desk, he looked at me with a smile. So you are the one that my student summoned. Don't be so surprised, young man. As someone who has a familiar, you should know that there are ways that I can keep an eye on my students. When he said that, I saw something sneaking under the desk and was slowly crawling towards the lady I was standing near. You don't say, then you are aware that I am a mage as well. Granted, my faithful weapon is not with me, but I can still do magic without it. I asked one of your professor if he could help me find a solution to my income and housing problem. I could, in fact, teach here. I happen to know quite a few things that your students could benefit from. He began to nod his head and looked at me. You don't have a staff or a wand, but you clearly can do magic. If your defense against one of my students was any indication, you could quite easily read my mind. Why would you ask me directly instead of reading what I am thinking? I told him that reading the mind of that rude pink-haired student of his was an emergency. I don't read the minds of others unless it is vital to do so. The mouse slowly began to move closer to Miss Longueville, and when the mouse was close enough for me to see it was a white mouse, like a lab rat actually, he began to look up, and that is when I realized what this rodent was doing. How dare he does this in my presence? I did a simple summoning charm and the mouse came right to my right hand. Excuse me, Miss Longueville, I hate to stop this discussion, but I feel that I should bring something up before this thing does something regrettable. I saw this rodent, for some strange reason, peeking up your dress. Now, do you mind to tell me how should I deal with this rude rodent? She looked at it and picked it up by the tail and dropped HRD on the headmaster's desk. Lord Osmond, if you don't stop using your familiar to do that, I might want to take you and this rat with me to complain to the palace. You are quite the prude for stopping my familiar from finding what color she was wearing today. As for your teaching, I am afraid that we must test your magical abilities tomorrow. you may stay in one of our guest quarters in the student dormitory since you are so much in respecting women, you should be no danger to our students at all. I told him that respecting a young lady's virtue is not being a prude, it is to be expected. I would never, and I mean never, do such a thing to a young lady. She was smiling at me as I said this. I could not help but feel pity for her if this sort of thing happened to her on the regular basis. My assigned room was spacious, well furnished, had an appealing view of the 2 moons, the bathroom was comfortable and even had warm water for my morning shower, the bed was as soft as if I was sleeping on a cloud. If I had anything to complain was not apparent, but I knew it was simply too good to be true. Something was going to go horribly wrong. After a short shower and managed to do a little cleaning of my clothes, who knew learning household charms would be this useful? I decided why stay in my room, I might as well look at the grounds and get a better idea on the layout of the academy, now that everyone was supposedly asleep, or at least they should be. They do have classes tomorrow after all. As I walked down to the first floor I saw 2 students getting quite cozy with each other. I nearly gagged as I heard the guy say that he would never hide his true feelings from her and that her quiche was something he was really looking forward to. I knew these were just things he was telling her to try and get something from her, more than likely get laid. As I walked past them and went towards the main entrance I heard a voice that I really wish I did not. Hold it right there, you are not getting away with this. I will not accept the excuse you gave the professor. You shall be my familiar, and I will accept nothing except your obedience. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Louise, I simply didn't have the inclination to waste time on her. I walked out and began to look at the grounds, a nice fountain on one side of the building, a rather sturdy construction on the building around, and the grounds seemed to be in immaculate perfection. All in all, I should consider finding the groundskeeper of this school and congratulate him or her on a magnificent job. I said, don't ignore me, commoner, Goeche, help me out here, hold that commoner with your earth magic and let me finally to complete the summon familiar ritual. You know that our families have been friends for years, you know you cannot deny me. Saw the very same blonde student who was shamelessly flirting with that girl who was clearly a couple of years younger than him. He walked towards me holding his wand. Did the fool really think that since I had no wand or staff I was defenseless? He clearly didn't see me do my magic earlier. I was not a current professor and I was not subject to the rules that would apply to them. Still, in truth, I have only a basic understanding of the rules. The information I got from reading this foolish girl's mind was not exactly either well organized or clear. In fact, it had been a real chore trying to figure the spoken and written language from what I read in her mind. I snapped my fingers and with a quickly summoned charm, I had his wand in my hand. I would think very carefully about what you are trying to do. I told you, I will not be forced to become your SLV. You need this wand to cast your magic, but I don't have that limitation. Now Goeche was it? I have the very tool you need to cast your magic. I don't imagine you have a spare. I looked at him and saw him stare at me with this really surprised look on his face. So the choice is simple, leave me in peace and you get your wand back from the headmaster after you tell him what this girl tried to get you to help her do, or the other option is I give you back your wand, and I challenge you to a duel, and believe me that unlike you, I would have no problem in ending your life. So tell me, young man, what will it be? I saw him ready to cry for his mother and run away like a monster was standing behind him as he ran, and let's face it, I was. I looked at Louise with her hand on her wand and kept trying to case something. I imagined something painful to punish me for not obeying her stupid little order. With a single flick of my wrist, I was holding her wand. I walked towards her and I dropped it like it was nothing. Now listen to me, little girl, I came out here to enjoy some fresh air, because I just had the worst day of my entire life, and I had many bad days, and you try to pull this. Well, I am not an instructor of this place. I am supposed to have my magical ability tested tomorrow, but I will tell you something before I go back to my room, and you better listen to Louise the Zero. Oh yes, I know that too. She began glaring at me with some actual rage in her eyes. I once had a weapon that makes your wands seem like the toys they are. I don't have one, 'cause I don't need one. You are a fool. Instead of insulting me you should have waited. They call you the Zero because your success in using elemental magic is 0. Well, little girl, there is magic that is not part of or influenced by the elements. She looked at me and I knew she was thinking I was a liar, just from her body language alone. I can make things that are not alive, come to life. I can turn a rock into a horse, and a horse into bird, and finally turn that bird into a statue of pure gold. My potion brewing abilities make what your people do seem like child's play. I can brew potions that will make you confess your deepest, darkest secrets with a single drop and a question, potions that give me complete control on how time affects a person. I can turn a grandmother into the same age as one of your classmates, and a classmate to look like she is old enough to be your grandmother. I can brew glory, cure any illness you can think of, stop death, cause, after all, while death calls you prey, she calls me MSTR. The only reason I will leave you alive is for you think, I have a familiar, who is my good friend Morgana, but if I didn't use the summon familiar ritual like you, and I didn't, how can I have a familiar? It is quite simple, I didn't need a spell to find my familiar, and had you decided to ask for my help, after a decent apology I could have helped you find a familiar that would have been your very best and dearest friend. Too bad you didn't think of that, Louise. Good night. I walked back to the dormitory, and as I walked up the stairs I saw a rather large salamander stand in front of me. Like I said, I got two of the worst neighbors in the entire floor. They hate each other so much that I wouldn't be surprised that they will eventually end up getting married to each other. Well, that is a question. Do same-sex marriages happen here? Tell me, why are you standing in front of my door? I have a rather important thing to do tomorrow and I am not in the mood for jokes or pranks. The salamander looked at me and began nodding her head. She sat down and looked at me. My MSTR has requested your presence and I cannot disobey her. I could try and carry you there, but since you can speak my language, how I do not know, I will not risk suffering your wrath, so please enter the door to the left of yours, and meet my MSTR. She is a rather amorous young lady by the name of Kerchi. I swear it is one problem after another. I actually miss outer heavens so much it is almost funny, but words fail to describe how much. I walked over to the door the salamander told me and knocked. I may be surrounded by savages, but I am not one. I heard a voice telling me that I could enter. As soon as I entered I saw a rather scantily dressed young woman, wearing some of the shall we say most revealing sleepwear I have ever seen. I have to say she does have a rather nice figure, her flaming red hair, and for some reason, she felt almost predatory as I looked at her face. So glad my familiar flame managed to find you, Mr. Potter. I am Kerchi Augusta Frederica von Anhaltserbst, but please call me Kerchi. I asked you to come to have a conversation with you, about today, about where you came from, and maybe about your plans. I know you must be quite troubled with the way things are going. I was often told that talking about your troubles with someone trustworthy helps. This made me think this was a trap. I know from the things I read or tried to read from the mind of the girl called Louise that she and this red-haired beauty are what one would call eternal rivals, and since she is dressed like this, I got the feeling that Kerchi wanted to claim me as her own servant, if only to rub it in the face of Louise, but I was raised a gentleman, at least she is more polite than Louise was. With a movement of my hand, I summoned a chair from downstairs and I sat down. Well, it is true my day has not gone that well. My blushing bride was murdered. I was rudely separated from my trusty weapon. To a warrior like me it is quite an insult to do, and your childhood rival, I wouldn't dream calling you two friends, or at least not at the moment, tried to force me into slavery yet again. So no, I wouldn't say my day has been a particularly good one. She moved a chair next to mine and tried to use my hormones against me. Not a bad plan, but not going to work on me. But how can you do magic without an instrument of some kind? I have a wand, and some even prefer a staff. Father said that those that do use a staff tend to be compensating for something, but no matter, how can you do magic like that? I made a fist and opened it to reveal that I was holding a small fireball, and a second later that fireball was gone, and instead a single rose was on my hand. I don't need one. Magic is magic. I am in touch with magics your teachers would never dream of, some appealing like this rose, and some terrible. I can make this rose into anything I want, a sword, a lance, or I could make this rose into a monster that could devour a person whole. I said I am a warrior, Kerchi, but in the end, all warriors are the same thing, in the end, killers. By the way, did you know you have a group of men looking into this room from that window over there? Is peeping into a lady's bedroom a common thing in this school, or does that only happen to you? She blasted enough fire spells to light an entire forest. I find that to be rather impressive. In truth, Being a beauty like myself, it is often hard not to gain the attention of men. I could say I called have said I summoned you here so that I could try and claim you as my own, to prove which one of us is better, and do something that not even my eternal rival, Louise, could do, but you know better than that, don't you? She sat on her bed and she looked at me. In truth, Louise and I were rather good friends, best friends as a matter of fact, but that was before our families influenced us into being rivals. I teased her, call her names, I know that would hurt, but here I can tell you the truth. I wanted my friend to push past that thing that was keeping her from being able to use her magic. I failed, and so I am here asking you, a stranger from another world, to help my once dear friend. I looked at her and could not help but to smile. I can help you, but not for free, it will cost you. As you pretty much saw your little wooden sticks, I don't need anything to help me with my magic. I do miss my trusty weapon, however, maybe one day I will find her again. As for you, I will tell you the same thing that I will tell anyone in this world. Nobody forces me to do anything. I will not be the familiar of anyone, especially when that person tries to force me. I got up and I heard her laughter. You know, you have quite the mercenary attitude, the more defiant, self-confident, and with such strength of will. Why, if you aren't careful, Mr. Potter, you could end up seducing quite a few young ladies, and not even try to do it. If you help a once dear friend, I will help you with anything you ask, and I do mean anything. As I walked out of the room and saw the salamander, I could not help but feel pity for the poor salamander. I know, thanks to Fleur, that having a nice pair like that tends to cause pain, but I don't that any of her male suitors know that, or even care. They just want to get laid. It is truly sad to see a young woman of such potential reduced by others to what clearly those men were thinking. I don't need to read minds to see the lust in their minds. As I went into my room, I saw that someone had already gone in, and she even had the nerve to fall asleep on my bed. Life in this dimension was not going to be pleasant if I could not even be free of her constant attempt to force me into slavery, not even in my bed. She thinks that I will have to accept to be her familiar when in the next morning I am found sleeping next to her in my bed. Childish, simply too childish. I made a fist and concentrated on the spell I needed. I summoned another bed from the storage and decided to build a wall between us. I will let her free after she apologizes. I changed my clothes into proper nightwear and decided to go to bed. As I closed my eyes, I felt myself get drowsy, and finally before too long I was in my dreams. I kept dreaming of a young woman wearing a tiara crying. She sounded so sad, so lonely. The more I tried to reach her, the further she was from me. As I woke up the next morning, I woke up to the sound of someone beating her fists against the wall I placed between our beds, and boy, she was not happy. Her little trap failed. Amateur. The whole intention of a trap is that it is concealed, not as obvious as what she tried to do. It's like leaving a landmine without bothering to bury it, there for all to see. Who would fall for that? Don't you have something to say, young lady? What sort of a noble walks into a gentleman's room, and sleeps so brazenly on his bed? She apologized, but then she said something that made me worry, that she actually walks in her sleep. DMN it, I am going to have to find a way to keep her out of my room. I snapped my fingers and decided to leave the room as it originally was. As I walked down the stairs and followed the crowd, I knew where these people were going. They are going to get some breakfast, which makes me wonder how in the world am I going to get anything to eat here? I don't have an income, as it were, so how am I going to get myself some breakfast? In the end, I have to thank Morgana for my breakfast. She insisted that she could fly around till she found me some apples to eat at the very least. You have no consideration towards me, don't you? Can't you see that I need a familiar? That I will be ridiculed and insulted by all my peers since I don't have a familiar and everyone else does. I finished my apples and I looked at her. Louise, have you ever wondered? How do I have a familiar and you don't have a familiar's mark like I do? So that means I didn't use your dimension's summon familiar ritual now, did I? Since I have one, don't you think it is possible that I know magic that your dimension does not even know it exists? I looked at her as it finally dawns on her. I asked the headmaster of your school for a job. Believe me, even if you knew how to send me back, I have nothing to return to, so I think I will just make a life here. But I may look your age, but I have seen things that would give the most veteran warrior nightmares. I have done things that you would never believe. I fought against a man who split his soul 7 ways to hell and died taking the one shining hope I had in my dimension. You are a lot like I once was, so I will help you. I looked at her as she still has that look on her face that says she doesn't know where I am going with my little monologue. I know that the headmaster probably will not do that, so in case I don't become your next teacher, I will not be your familiar, however, you will become my student. I will teach you things this world has never even discovered, and you will learn why failed at the spells they taught you. Just get this through your head, I am the teacher and you are my student, take it or live with the consequences, but next time you try to force me to be your familiar, I will kill you. As I looked at her and she took hold of my hand, she began to look like she realized I was not kidding. Alright, I can accept that if it makes it so that they stop making fun of me by calling me the Zero, so how about it, teach? When do my lessons start? I wanted to tell her tomorrow, but why wait? Her lessons would start after dinner, need the open space of the courtyard and some privacy to teach her what I plan to teach her. Hope I can make Professor McGonagall proud. I looked at her and smiled, or at least I tried to smile. Magic is a force of nature, it is in everything that is alive, it flows through all creation, and thus to learn what I will teach you, you first must understand. I am not like your previous teachers, I do not accept foolishness and distractions from my student. My teaching of you must be quick and will be severe, do not expect me to hold back simply because of your age or your so-called noble status. I began by pushing my magic in my hand and sending it to the ground, forming a makeshift cauldron. You cannot use elemental magic because your magic is not the magic that influences or adds elemental power, it is a magic that removes elemental energy. Your peers add, your magic takes. I see that in your mind you will have to attend a festival that requires you to have a familiar. This will show you that indeed I know what I am doing, maybe even make you understand why I can teach you when no one else could. Water began to boil in the cauldron and different roots and plants began to fly into it. I cut them with my magic by waving my hand and stirred it with my other hand. As soon as the smell hit my nose I knew the potion was complete. Prick your finger on this, and drop a single drop of your BLD in the potion. Before I do anything else, tell me what you expect from your familiar. She did as I told her, even if she did not look happy doing so. I expect my familiar to obey my commands, to be my servant and live his or her life for my benefit. I imagine this is why the spell to summon her familiar failed. No living creature would ever want to be treated as a thing, and especially not one that could understand humans. I better teach her something else or no potion I can make will have a chance to succeed. A familiar is not a servant, he is your friend, you most trusted friend. A familiar may do things when asked, but it is because the familiar cares about the person asking. Morrigan cares about me, as I care about her. She would die to protect my life, and she knows I would never place her in jeopardy without due cause. You want a familiar to show off, that will never work, you should want one to be your best friend and constant companion. The liquid changed colors from green to red and finally a deep purple. I knew the potion was ready. If you want to see your familiar, drink that potion and repeat after me. From ages past I call upon you, you whom are tied to my soul and are my precious friend, heed my call and appear before me. Let our old friendship be what it was once upon a time. She didn't look like she wanted to even touch the potion, but I looked at her and finally she took a small sip of it. She kicked the cauldron and as she said the words the potion began to change shape, the fumes became more solid and the figure of a small animal was seen forming from the place she spilled her potion. Who is it that dares to summon me? Answer me, mortals, for my time is as limited as my patience. She stepped closer to the dark form of the being she just summoned. Place your hand on his head and send your magic into him. Tell him of your intentions. She did as I told her and began smiling the most gentle smile I have seen on her. My name is Louise, I summoned you, the friend of my soul, to join me now and be with me in my time among the living. Come to me, Kobu, and give your old friend a hug. I didn't tell her that name, but it seems the creature liked the name. As it jumped through the dark film that had once covered him from head to toe, the image was of a white wolf. It was smaller than the one I saw once in an old picture book. In my world, they were called the Siberian timber wolf. The first thing it did was jump at her and tackled her to the ground as he rubbed his head on hers, and as she was done laughing, she began to get up, and as soon as they were both near each other, Kobu bit her hand began to bleed and she was scared until I stepped closer to her and told her to wait for a second. The BLD did not drip from the wound, Instead, the BLD began to shift and change. I knew exactly what was happening. Morrigan, as she was sitting on my shoulder, began to laugh. The BLD changed into this dark crimson mark of an animal that looked like Kobu. He was not hurting you, Louise. Unlike your familiar summoning, this is your familiar mark. He can live inside it, and thus you two will never be separated again. You can even listen to his thoughts as if they were your own. Thank you, Morrigan, for showing me the potion and incantation. She pecked my ear lightly, and as she returned into my mark I heard her say that for me she would do anything. As Kobu saw he too entered the mark, and for some reason, Louise began to laugh like she was being told some rather funny jokes. Now you have your familiar, now be honest with me, do you still wish to learn more from me? As I told you, I demand dedication and precision from my students. I will not accept anything less, and I can be quite the taskmaster. She finally finished talking with Kobu as she finished hearing my words. Yes, I want to learn magic that nobody knows of. I want to learn everything you can teach me. I began to look at her and decided to accept her as my first and so far the only student. I could not help but smile as I heard the eagerness in her voice to learn new things. Very well, we shall begin your instructions tomorrow in the afternoon. This should give you two some time to get to know each other better. I will warn you that he feeds of your magic while inside the mark, so don't be surprised if tomorrow you find yourself with a little more appetite than usual. I saw someone I just met not so long ago and she didn't look happy for some reason. Now Louise, I must go. It seems the headmaster has decided on my future role in this school. Be nice to your familiar, and your familiar will do the same. As soon as I go, the two of you can start to talk with each other. You have quite a few things to talk about. She began to laugh and I knew she was already talking with Kobu. As I walked over to the green-haired beauty, I could feel something close to anxiety from her. Ms. Longueville, I gathered the headmaster has decided my fate, has he? I also see from your expression that he did something again to upset you. Worry not, I shall not do something of a perv nature to you. Should I go to meet the headmaster by myself or would you like to accompany me there? She actually thanked me for telling her I could go by myself. Honestly, the headmaster should be a role model, a person students can look up to as a moral guide and as a guide on proper behavior. I mean, my last headmaster was gayer than Paris during springtime, but the man was never as perv as this guy. Seeing the guy I am going to visit, I can say without a doubt he truly was a wonderful role model. Why do I say this, you ask? The second I entered his office, what do you think I saw? That's right, he was breathing hard while looking at more porn than a teenager, and I mean books full of this stuff. From my own personal experience, some of them reminded me of someone I dearly loved and miss, but the fact that the headmaster was doing this in his office, made me angry enough that it took a massive effort to stop myself from burning it and him with it. Headmaster Osmond, I think you have a much more important thing to tell me than to look at drawings and images of half-naked women, don't you? That finally made the idiot realize there was someone else in the room. I will say one thing. He sure can hide his pawn stash faster than any teenager in my world. Ah, yes, I told Miss Longueville to tell you that we have reached a decision on your proposal to teach at this academy and the situation of your own academic achievements, and as such we have decided to put you in the second year of our academy. While you might be a fully trained mage in your own world, we simply cannot know if their level of education equals that of our world. I was not liking this. We also believe that since we have managed to get you acknowledged as a noble, that you need more time to acclimate to the world you find yourself in. By attending the classes with the other students you shall be able to probably learn a thing or two that you did not have in your world, and you may develop your knowledge to be a proper nobleman. It's true, I was not liking this one bit. So, in short, it doesn't matter that I am a full-fledged mage, that I can do things the teachers of this academy could not even dream of. They refuse to acknowledge my abilities because they think that belittles their own academic achievements. Put it simply, they think that if they do accept my skills, they would be forever embarrassed by the fact a guy much younger did what took them much longer to achieve. He stopped looking at a book and looked at me. You sure are quick to understand the situation. In fact, you are correct. They even threatened to all quit if your skills were recognized. In other words, they said this: if that punk becomes a teacher we are gone. I know you would do a wonderful job in teaching a class, or even 5 of them, but I cannot expect you to teach the entire academy by yourself. It would be impossible for me to keep this place operational if that should happen. I guess deep down I understood where he was coming from, and I do understand the feelings of my now future teachers quite a bit. I would also be embarrassed if something like that happened, but at least I would simply think of it as that student was the exception to the rule, and not let it bother me to the point of actually threatening the headmaster of the school I work in. If Osmond had a single cruel bone in this body, or if he was me for that matter, I would take their threats or being disloyal to the school, and I would actually do exactly what they threatened me not to do. I would call their bluff and see if they are willing to pay the piper when the chips don't fall in their favor. Chances are they would apologize and retract that threat immediately if they realized that they could actually lose their jobs, prestige, and social status. It didn't matter anyway. If they did name me a teacher, the students would never respect or listen to the teachings of a person that was younger, older, or the same age as they are. Let's face it, I was the age of a typical second-year student. They would call it favoritism or the headmaster feeling sorry for me, and that would be the positive things they would say. I don't want to think about the horrors the other students might dream up. I was given a room in the men's dorm, and enough clothes that I could wear for at least 2 weeks. That gives me enough spare clothing and underwear to be able to have a few pieces to wear when I finally have to do the laundry. I came down to the mess hall and finally, I was about to eat something when I felt someone sit on the chair right next to the one I was sitting. So are you a teacher or a student? From the looks of your clothes, I would say they made you the same year as I am. I am not going to mince words here. I don't like Louise. I don't like her one bit. I do however hate bullies a lot more. No, I will not be part of the teaching staff here anytime soon. I, however, will be your teacher from now on, Louise, so mind your manners. So try to remember that I can change my mind and leave you to be called and mocked by being addressed as that lovely number you seem to hate so much. This made her become quiet from that moment on, till the food finally was being served. To me, it was a useless gesture, or maybe I got so used to having my food magically appear on a platter before me. Most people in my original world considered house elves to be nothing more than servants. After I saw how they placed the food on my plate, I realized that I actually miss having Dobby to help me with things. You truly never know what you had until after you lose, it seems. I finished saying my prayer of thanks and I picked my fork when I finally heard something from Louise. What exactly do you find lovely about the number 0? I guess my lessons begin before I even had lunch. For your information, the number 0 is a wonderful number. It symbolizes the beginning and end of all creation, a number that describes a vast emptiness and at the same time infinite possibilities. Without the number, you hate so much, society and culture could not progress as much as it has. I took a bite of the thing I thought was a baked potato. Turns out it was, but it was stuffed with this really nice creamy sauce. Without the number 0 in math, for instance, you would never be able to could beyond 9. So you see, Louise, the number you hate so much is a wonderful number, and while they think it means failure, it also means endless possibilities. That is something you will learn. The rest of my meal was a salad involving fruit, nuts, and berries. I was simply loving the taste of it. The combination was perfect, not too sweet, not too bitter, everything in the right proportions to make it taste delicious. I saw a big, muscular man, with the biggest mustache I ever saw, walk around the area and stop to listen to what people said. To my surprise, it looked like they were complaining. I looked at him and did as the rest called him towards me, which he did as the others. He walked over to where I was and was ready to apparently listen to me complain about the food. I wanted to tell you that this food was delicious. It is the single best breakfast I could imagine. Thank you. I still don't know why he left the place where he was standing in such a hurry. I guess he felt insulted. Must be that things are done differently on this dimension. My lessons in the school were, in a word, a waste of time. The only time that was not wasted was when I was teaching Louise all the theory I could about the magic that was not elemental in nature. I can say many things about her, but lack of dedication to my lessons was not one of them. I began to teach her as if she was the first year in Hogwarts. I mean, I began teaching exactly the same lessons. I taught her a class on charms one day, a class on transfiguration on the next, hexes, curses, and other offensive magic when I saw she could handle the first 2 spells I taught her, and potions because she needs a well-rounded education, and because it appears this universe has some crazy ideas about the different kinds of potions. I personally hated the notion of a love potion and made sure to teach my student ethics first and foremost, especially about ethical thinking regarding the use and brewing of potions. Little did I know that in fact, I was not alone in my hatred of such potions. The very kingdom that the school was in made a law that making such potion, and using it was heavily punished. Well done, Louise, that is the levitation charm. This charm is useful to lift items off any surface, even water. Right now you can only lift a feather, but with enough concentration and practice, well, you will be able to lift bigger and heavier things. I am not joking that this spell can be used to save the lives of people in need. A person falling from great heights or a person that is drowning can be saved by this charm. I saw that she was still having trouble with the transfiguration and the lock-bind hex. Transfiguration is one of the most dangerous and most demanding forms of magic that I will teach you. There simply is no room for taking it easy. This is serious business, and if done incorrectly it could even kill you. You will continue to use the spell I taught you till you manage to turn that piece of wood into a needle. She was truly getting frustrated with this and she stopped practicing for a second before she began to walk towards me with a nasty expression on her face. Why do I need to know how to change one thing into another? What is the use of being able to turn a piece of wood no bigger than a toothpick into a needle? How about a little demonstration? Or it is that you know the talk but can't do the walk. I could do her needle transfiguration with my eyes closed, but I better make her see we are not in the same level when it came to magic. I better make sure my student understand why I am her teacher and she is my student and earned her respect. I picked one of the toothpicks and with a slight movement of my hand the toothpick became a needle. Another movement of my hand the needle became a metal bar. The metal bar under my command began to change into a metal serpent. Louise was not smiling when she saw the metallic snake slither towards her. She tired to cause the serpent to float away from her, but she could still not handle the spell well enough to lift something as heavy as the snake. I ordered the snake to wrap around her neck. She truly was looking scared as I gave my order in the language of snakes. When the snake bites her own tail, and with a snap of my fingers the snake became a metallic necklace, and as she touched it, the necklace became the toothpick in her hand. From wood to metal, from metal to living, from living into the inanimate, and back to wood again. All in matter minutes. Your friend is injured while walking through the nearby forest. You can't carry your friend, but with the branch of magic I am teaching you, you don't have to. You should be able to make a horse and carriage from a large rock and a couple of field mice. You want to cook something but your friend did not bring a pan? Make one. Louise kept looking at me and finally, she understood what I was saying, or I could make a gift for my best friend in case I wanted to make something special for her birthday. Like the necklace you made a few moments ago. Sad that it turned back into this toothpick. It was a rather nice necklace. That is when I looked at her and smiled. If you liked the way the necklace looked by the time your training in this branch of magic is over, you will be able to make that, and a pair of bracelets and earrings to match. I began teaching her the spell and sure she had a tough time, but by the end of the first lesson, they did manage to make a needle. Some of the ends of it was a little like the toothpick but she made good progress. McGonagall would be proud of my lesson. As time went by she got closer to her familiar and she also got better at the spells I taught her. She could cast charms to the level of her current year, transfiguration, and a few hexes. Curse she had a bit of trouble because she surprisingly enough did not have the intent on causing actual harm on the targets I had transfigured for her. That was an issue until I made a mannequin that looked like me, and that proved to be a very good idea. She had no problem at all cursing that mannequin into pieces. If I was an ordinary guy I would worry about my safety. My student could not use a spell that caused harm on a snake that I made by transfiguring a rope, but the mannequin, she can burn, explode, crush, or even cut in half with no problem at all. The lessons I was learning in the classes they taught were as interesting as a history lecture from Professor Binns, and in case I have to explain, Professor Binns taught history back in my old school. He simply took a nap in the teacher's lounge one day and kicked the bucket. Simply got up from where he was taking his nap and taught the class as nothing happened. This guy could put anyone to sleep, a great cure for insomnia though. The lessons became my unofficial nap time. As I spent so much time teaching Louis, I needed the extra sleep, some of the teachers would throw at me a piece of chalk and try asking me to do a class task. The teachers that threw me an apple were the ones I really felt any gratitude towards. I really found the snack helpful. My lessons were progressing rather well, and thanks to the mannequin approach my student caught up to her current year level. It only took her 2 months, which in my honest opinion it was rather amazing. Couldn't help but to feel pride in the academic accomplishments of my student. Her familiar and she became so close, it was almost like they were friends all their lives. In the end of the 3rd month we were told that since the familiars had plenty of time to get used to being with their masters, and their masters knew the familiars better, a little show and tell sort of festival was going to happen. The festival was to showcase the talents of the familiar the student summoned. Honestly, this is not the way to treat a familiar. They should be grateful that they have someone that is willing to help them, be their friends, and constant emotional support. It is not proper to simply treat them as pets for bragging rights, for crying out loud. Considering that she once was much like the people she was complaining about, I could not help but lose control of my emotions. A tear began to roll down my eye. To see my student understand what I taught her was simply so wonderful that I could not help it. I simply was overwhelmed with this feeling of joy. "Why are you crying, sir? Did I say something that you found offensive?" I could not help but to smile as I heard my student say this. Not long ago she was this boastful, egocentric little tomboy. Now she treats me with such respect, and I still have many things to teach her. I wonder if the professors that taught at Hogwarts ever felt like this. "No, my student, you said nothing that is offensive. I simply am happy that you have learned the things I was teaching you. You make me very proud, my student. Indeed, after they get done with their show and tell show, I think a reward is in order. I guess I will give you a treat and show you how to change forms." She looked at me with a bit of confusion. Guess I never taught her what an animagus is. "Louis, mages like me and soon enough you, can take the form of an animal that is similar to the mage that attempts this feat. Those that can take an animal form are called animagus. One of my teachers could actually transform into the form of a tabby. I will need to prepare a potion for you to discover your form, but at the end of the show and tell I shall show you my animal form." As I began to eat dinner, I looked at my friend and familiar Morgana, who was eating something right next to me. "Don't worry, Morgana, they clearly said that the festival is to show the newly summoned familiars talents. That should not apply to us. I had the joy of your company for years, so why do you look so worried?" She finished eating and looked at me with a look of pity. I never seen her looking at me like that. "You might say so, Harry. You might even think so, but trust me, sometimes the best laid plans, the most believed notions fail to meet the person's expectations. You might end up having to participate. Now why don't we enjoy a night stroll, to simply enjoy the nighttime air?" I knew why she said that. The reason was that she was going to tell me something she did not want anyone to even attempt to listen, as some clearly are trying to do. "Sure, let's go." I got up and she went inside. The mark on my shoulder, we walked towards the exit, and that is when I saw someone I was not expecting. Guiche actually flirting with another girl, this time a brunette, a year younger than her, or at least that is the impression I was getting. "You know, Kathy, there is nothing hidden in my feeling for you." Here I was thinking that the pickup lines Fleur told me she endured were bad, and after hearing this from him, they were at least not as corny as what Guiche said. I decided to walk near them. "Miss, a young lady such as yourself should be more careful with this one. I have seen him be rather close to a blonde lady in his year, and tried to flirt with 3 other ladies in different years. Guiche here styles himself the school's Casanova, so I suggest you do a quick analysis of anything he offers you." As I began to walk away I saw the girl. "I know he is currently dating the very same cheating moron." I looked at her. She clearly was looking for someone, and I think I know who it is. "Excuse me, Ms. Montmorency, I do believe that is your name. You already know who I am. If you are looking for your boyfriend, I believe you will find him getting yelled at by a young lady with brunette hair color, by the fountain by the entrance to the dorms." I know I should not really bother to do this, that this is really a private matter, but then again I always had a soft spot when it came to defending the dignity of the fair section. Fleur simply called it my knight in shining armor complex. I guess even here I simply hate to see women being abused like that, playing with their emotions for fun. How low can a guy go? Back when Fleur was with me, I often talked with her how I would deal with fools that dared to do such things with our potential daughters. It always ended the same way no matter the discussion: one fool dead, my daughter safe, and the only difference was how the fool died. Sure enough, after a few minutes he had two young ladies screaming at him such things that made even me blush. On my way to the dorm I found 3 more ladies that I know had been flirting with him, so I did the only honest thing, gave each a friendly piece of advice and directed them towards where Guiche was getting yelled at. I finally made it back to my room and I simply could not stop smiling. Today was a good day after all. I made a perv suffer. My student is learning very well. In fact, if this continues I can even slow down the rate she is learning at, allowing her to take it easier with my lessons, since she is pretty much has caught up with my plan for her studies. Well, seeing that she no longer needs to be taught at such a faster speed, gave me plenty of chances to try and experiment a little. Since now I had some free time, Colbert was nice enough to let me use the instruments in his lab, and with a little work I had a minor forge constructed. The idea was that Colbert needed it to make new instruments he could use or repair things for the school. Metallurgy research was the official reason that was written into the school records. It was not a lie. I did plenty of research trying to combine their equivalent of iron and copper. The main reason is, as a soldier I feel quite frankly not without a weapon. My alone time was primarily focused on the things I no longer had, weapons and armor I could use. It's simply not good not being able to defend myself if for some ungodly reason someone finds a way to negate all magic in a battlefield. The first thing I made was a simple press. It was simply to allow me to assemble the ammunition. The next best thing is I had to mix something these people never even knew of. I am not kidding, these people never heard of gunpowder. I will never be able to forget the things father taught me, and I find myself being very grateful to him. I made every component needed. I made a light durable blend of metals, that allowed me to pretty much make a bullet with a crystal tip. The tip would be the thing I place my spells in, and in doing so, I do something they never imagined. I could fire a single shot to penetrate armor, and at the same time blast the inside of my target with a spell. I felt that I should keep the construction of my weapons simple. The less complicated the better reliability, so I made a revolver, a simple 6-shot revolver. Mine was made to be quite durable, and thanks to magic I also made it possible to only work for me, and expel empty casings and teleport ammo to replace it with a simple metal command. I made enough ammo that if I really wanted to, I could take on a squad of enemies, and it is nice to know that this world does not have the inconvenient rules and regulations my original world had. Nothing stopping me from using excessive force here. Nope, nothing at all. So Mr. Potter, what do you call this thing that you've been working on, if you don't mind me asking? I looked at him and smiled. I don't mind at all, Professor Colbert. Why, this is my new sidearm. This is the effort to combine magical and non-magical means to the field of practical combat. I call this Beauty Gehenna, because the people that go up against this, will feel like they are in hell. Harry, there is no need for such a thing in this world. You know we are pretty safe in the kingdom of Tristane. I told him that it never hurts to be prepared. This little creation of mine could end up saving the kingdom. After all, if someone I held dear once taught me, peace is a lie. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for more crossovers. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story in Hector Flores on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.